Today, the show is going to explore something a little different. The in-between isn't just limited to the paranormal. It's about life and the universe and the bizarre coincidences that it seems to throw at us. And today, we're going to talk about the supernatural gifts that some, if not all, children possess. Whether it's knowing about simple details about a long-dead relative, revitalizing a loved one on their deathbed, or remembering an entire life of someone else, there's something always trying to pierce the veil. I'm Van Hulsing, and you're listening to Life, the Universe, and Everything in Between. Our first story begins in a car during a routine drive. A mother and grandmother are in the front, and in the back is 3-year-old Alexia. She's chatting away, just a toddler listing the people in her world. She starts listing them off. There's Grandpa Ed, and Poppy, and Grandpa Beyer. The car goes dead silent. You see, Ed and Poppy were here, but Grandpa Beyer? He was the grandmother's father. He had been gone for years. Alexia had never met him. She hadn't even seen a picture of him because in that house, there weren't any photos of him to display. The grandmother finds her voice and asks, "How do you know Grandpa Beyer?" Alexia just shrugs. "Sometimes he's in my room." When asked what they talk about, she says, just Alexia things. But it wasn't just Alexia things. A few days later, the grandmother, Beyer's own daughter, is going through some old photos. Suddenly, Alexia stops her. She points at a face in a faded photograph. A man she had never seen in her life, and says, "That's Grandpa Beyer." Stunned, the grandmother decides to test this visitor. She asks, "How many children did he have?" Alexia doesn't blink. She says 6. The air leaves the room. To the family, the answer was 5. But to the man in the photo, the answer was always 6, counting the one child who was stillborn. A piece of family history tucked away in the shadows of grief, known only to the dead, and now to the great-granddaughter. The fact that there were no photos in the house is a critical detail for skeptics. It eliminates cryptomnesia. It's the idea that she saw the photo before and forgot it. It shifts the story from a creepy kid moment to a profound family reunion. It suggests that Grandpa Beyer wasn't just a ghost in the hallway. He was a presence waiting to be acknowledged by the newest member of his bloodline. It makes you wonder, if she can recognize him from a photo she's never seen, who else is standing in our living rooms right now, just waiting for someone to say their name? This is what researchers call a hidden fact case. It's one thing for a child to guess a favorite color. It's another one to accurately count the members of the family tree that include those who never made it into the family photos. When we hear stories like the Grandpa Beyer case, we look into the research. Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia has spent years looking at cases exactly like this. Interestingly enough, many children don't just see strangers. They gravitate towards deceased family members who have unfinished business or strong emotional ties to the living. For my mother-in-law, that wasn't just a spooky moment. It was a validation. It suggests that her father wasn't just a memory, but an observer who knew the full count of his children, even the one the world never got to meet. But there are other children that seemingly remember living full lives, possessing details they shouldn't be able to possess. When children claim to remember full lives, it often goes beyond a simple name or face. They frequently recount specific technical details, traumatic endings, and even the space between lives. One famous case is that of James Lanninger, who remembered being a World War II pilot. As a toddler, James had horrific nightmares of a plane crash. He eventually named the ship the Natoma Bay, his plane a Corsair, and a fellow pilot he saw die. His parents later confirmed all these details through military records, none of which were known to the family beforehand. Another famous case is of Ryan Hammonds, who remembered being a Hollywood extra. At age 5, Ryan claimed he used to be someone else in Hollywood. He pointed to a photo in a book of 1930 movies extras and correctly identified 55 details about the man's life, including his 3 marriages and the street he lived on. The University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies has studied over 2,500 such cases. About 70% of the children who report past life memories recall a violent or accidental death. Memories typically surface between ages 2 and 6 and usually fade by age 7 as the child begins school and integrates into their current life. Some children are even born with birthmarks or defects that correspond exactly to the wounds the previous person had suffered. Some theorists suggest this isn't necessarily soul migration, but a form of a genetic memory or leak in the collective consciousness. They argue that younger brains, before being socialized into strict logical thinking, are more perceptive to information that exists outside their personal experience. One of the most striking patterns in these cases is the timeline. Whether it's your daughter knowing about the 6th Grandpa Buyer child, or a boy remembering a cockpit in World War II, these memories almost begin to dissolve between the ages of 5 and 7. Research shows that as children enter school and start building their own current lives, the past memories simply stop being accessed. It's a phenomenon called childhood amnesia. Scientists say the brain's prefrontal cortex is maturing, and the rapid production of new neurons in the hippocampus might actually overwrite these early, ethereal files to make room for new ones, like learning to read, making friends, and navigating the world. But for parents, it can be a strange loss. One day your child is a portal to the unknown, and the next, they're just a kid who wants to know what's for lunch. They don't forget in the way we lose our car keys. They integrate. The spirit of the past becomes a part of the foundation of who they are today, even if they can no longer point to it and call it by name. While some children remember past lives, others claim to remember the time before they were born. Children between ages 3 and 5 often describe a blue space, a garden, or a waiting room where they chose their parents. They will often tell their mother, "I saw you crying when you were sad before I came," or describe specific events that happened while they were still in the womb. This is often called announcing dreams or pre-existence memories, researched heavily by authors like Dr. Wayne Dyer and Elizabeth Hallett. We talked about children bringing information from the past, but what about the energy they bring into the present? Xenoglossy is perhaps the most scientifically baffling power. It's a phenomenon where a child who has never traveled and lives in a monolingual household suddenly begins speaking or praying in a foreign, often ancient language. The most famous case was documented by Dr. Ian Stevenson, where children could carry on full conversations in a language they had no possible way of learning. A listener shared a story that sounds like a medical impossibility. A grandmother was in hospice, her final hours. The family had gathered for the last goodbye. Her grandson arrived with his wife and their newborn baby. The grandmother, who had been drifting away, asked to hold the child. And as that brand new life was placed in her arms, something shifted. It wasn't just a smile. It was a total restoration of vigor. A woman at death's door made what her own doctor called a complete 360 turn. The doctor, after decades in the field, said he had never seen anything like it. It's as if the life essence of the infant acted as a jumper cable for the grandmother's soul. In some spiritual traditions, it is believed that newborns possess an abundance of chi, or vital energy, because they are so fresh from the source. Could it be that for a few precious moments, that baby shared its light to give her one last day in the sun? It brings us to a heavy realization. Perhaps life and death aren't two separate rooms, but a hallway where we can occasionally reach out and pull someone back for one last look. Research into skin-to-skin contact, known as kangaroo care, shows that a baby's presence can regulate an adult's heart rate and cortisol levels. Could this biological bond be even more profound in the final hours of life? While medical professionals often see a temporary rally before death, the trigger in this case, the touch of a new generation, suggests a spiritual exchange that defies the standard timeline of decline. Maybe we all had those memories once. Maybe we all saw Grandpa Beyer or remembered a different home. But as we grew, the noise of being an adult, the bills, the schedules, the logic, simply drowned out the signal. The story of the grandmother in hospice reminds us that the signal doesn't disappear. It just waits. It waits for the newborn's touch to be reminded of where it came from. It waits for the end of life to show us where we might be going next. So listen to the children. They're telling us the truth about the world. We've just forgotten how to understand their language. Thanks for listening. This has been Life, the Universe, and Everything in Between. If you have a story you'd like to share or a topic, or you just want to say hi, you can reach me at theinbetweenpod.com. And as always, keep your eyes open for what lies in the in-between.